the Yerricksville lead meetings. I've heard him lead once. I believe he carries a good message. He's a very positive guy, and without anything else from me, I'll give you Jim.
All right, will you help me start this meeting with the serenity prayer, please?
God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
All right, my name is Jim. I'm an alcoholic and drug addict.
Hey, Jim.
By the grace of God and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps, and a lot of people I can't even all begin to name, I haven't found it necessary to take a drink of alcohol or to do a drug in 1,861 days. May 5th, about a month ago, I celebrated 5 years sober. And it feels good. It keeps getting better and better. I'm trying not to get nervous. I think everybody knows my dad's in the front row here, and the sponsor just rolled in. And other than that, things are great.
We're taking notes, too.
But no, I think I told everybody my dad was coming to town. What a great spiritual, just, you know, AA miracle is just happening for me. You know, it's kind of a small miracle compared to some of the ones I've heard. But, you know, my dad was raised in Junaidin, and he's been sober in AA for 30 years. And you know, most of my life, he was like my sponsor when I didn't realize I needed a sponsor. You know, when I was like 25, I'd call my dad up with some self-imposed crisis, and he'd say stupid stuff like, "You need to go to an AA meeting," you know. And it didn't make any sense to me at the time, you know. But he always seemed to have this great wisdom. I thought he was, you know, kind of like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the world until I realized he was just spitting back AA stuff at me. He said, "Calm down, son. This too shall pass." I said, "Wow, that's some deep stuff." But it's just, it's a humbling experience. The last AA meeting I was at, of course, was last night, the big meeting in the stadium, and there were 10,000 people were there. There were 16 people here. So, but that's what a guy like me needs, you know. That's what an alcoholic of my nature needs. I'm 44 years old as of now, and I was born in 1969. Obviously, with my dad and my mom, and I was an only child. Much later on in my life, my parents, you know, a sister came into my life, so if you ever get confused about me saying I was an only child and I have a sister, that's why. When I was raised an only child, and by the time I was 4 years old, my mom, who I always say doesn't qualify for Al-Anon, had had enough with my dad here, and so they got divorced. And my dad, about a year later, he moved to Florida. And so the deal was, with most of my life, my mom, who remained single, I stayed here with her in school year, during the school year, and then in the summertime I get to go down to Florida and see my dad. And you know, I always tell people I don't have the biggest, baddest story in AA. I lived a very blessed life, you know. Of course, I didn't see it that way, but I did. You know, I never really wanted for much of anything. I wasn't the richest kid in school, I wasn't the poorest, but I always had a loving family that encouraged me. You know, I can't claim to have been born under a bad sign or anything like that. My life went pretty normal. I spent the school years here in Tuscarawas County, mostly around Yerricksville with my mom, and she worked hard to support me. Of course, I was a kid. I wasn't grateful for that, didn't understand it, but I look back at it now, and I'm very grateful for it, and I try to show that. And every summer I'd go to Florida, and I'd see my dad, and I loved being with my dad. He was fun, and we'd go fishing, and he told great stories, and he grew up in the 60s and all that, and I just loved being there. And my first drink happened, I guess, when I was 15. I was about 15 years old, and like I said, I was down in Florida with my dad. It was the last weekend I was going to be there, and we were going fishing, and you know, usually we went fishing with like a cousin or an uncle or something, but this time we were with, it was just me and Dad and some of his drinking buddies, because he had a lot of them, I guess, you know. And we were in the Florida Keys, and that was a big deal at the time, I guess, you know, because it was that rite of passage when you're like with Dad and his buddies, you know what I mean? Everybody has that rite of passage, and well, I'm one of the guys now. And we went fishing, it was a great time, and we got back to the hotel, and all those guys wanted to go to a go-go bar. Is about the best way I can put it. And my dad used to always say there's nothing to do in the Florida Keys but fish and drink and go to go-go bars. So I was only 15, and that kind of scared me a little bit, but they, you know, put a hat on my head and shoved me through the door and gave a big tip to the guy that was the bouncer, and there I was, you know, I'm 15 years old, and I'm in a go-go bar and drinking Budweiser long necks, and you know, as I often say, I wasn't familiar with the phrase, but in my mind I thought to myself, I have arrived. This is it, you know, I'm one of the guys, I'm grown up, right? Bam, just like that, you know. And nothing really exciting came of the drunk, you know. I mean, I was a little drunk and it felt good, but I guess I got my foot in the door. I started to get that feeling, and over the next couple of years, it really kicked in, and suddenly I felt just like we all did when we started drinking. I was a little bit cooler and a little bit more courageous, and able to talk to the ladies a little better, and all those things that alcohol was able to do for me. And pretty soon alcohol opened the door and gave me the courage to do some other things. I was still a pretty good student. I was mostly a weekend warrior. Back in those days, one good night of drinking would last me all week. You get drunk on Saturday and you spend the next 3 or 4 days bragging to your buddies about how good it was and how great it was and how wild it was, and then you spend the next couple of days planning on your next drunk and who you're going to hook up with. And I remember, it's funny, the things that come back to you, the more will be revealed thing just never goes away. 5 years sober, stuff keeps coming back to me. My mom used to give me $1 for lunch. And like I said, my mom's a single mom, like struggling to get by, and my mom would give me $1 for lunch, and I'd go to school, and then I'd turn around and come home for lunch and pocket that $1, and I'd save that $1 up every day for the weekend, and I'd be, big high roller that I was, I'd lay out $4 or $5 when it come drinking time, But even then, I was a liar, a cheater, and a thief, even back then, Why'd you come home for lunch? Oh, I was hungry, But, even back then, that behavior was starting. I'm going to lie. I'm going to cheat to the people that love me so I can get some alcohol in me. And my high school career was fine. I was, a pretty good student without trying very hard. In my mind, I was a legendary athlete. In reality, I was just kind of an also-ran. But I did like sports, and I stayed out of trouble. I didn't skip school. I didn't get arrested, things like that. I will say, like I said, every summer I used to go see my dad. And right about the time that he gave me my first drink, he decides that he's had enough and he's going into Alcoholics Anonymous. He sobered up that year, about a month later. And I don't have time to tell you his whole story, and I'm not up here to tell it to you. But so he gets sober right afterwards, and it didn't mean much to me at the time. I always say that when I was young, I never realized my dad was an alcoholic. He wasn't a raging, abusive alcoholic or nothing. He was just always fun to be around. And anyway, now I go to Florida in the summertime, and when I hang out with my dad, he goes to AA meetings. And I would tag along with him, but I was just there as a visitor. I had no intentions of getting sober. I hadn't really developed, in my opinion, a drinking problem yet. And but why I mention that is because I think it was important, because it let me know that Alcoholics Anonymous was all right, and it wasn't some sort of crazy cult or anything like that. Although he has some pretty crazy friends. But it was an introduction. They often say, you might be the only big book somebody reads. And at that time in my life, I guess Dad and his friends were the only big book I did read. It didn't seem very important to me at the time, but later on in my life, when I realized I needed some help, I knew that I could come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and it would, that they might be able to help me. I don't want to get bogged down in that, though. I graduated from high school, and I was, I lived here in Yerkesville, and it just wasn't big enough for a man of my talents and dreams. I had to get to the big city, and I went to Miami for a while with my dad for about a year. Then I moved back here and did the freshman year of college at Akron, and Akron wasn't big enough, so I took off to Ohio State to finish my college career. And I'm getting to be 19 or 20 now, and all the while here, my drinking is escalating. I went from drinking, it's no longer a one-night deal. Now it's, kind of a weekend warrior. Now you're in college, and it's Thursday night, and Friday night, and Saturday night, and, all the while, it's progressing, but still nothing bad's really happening in my life, Excuse me, I haven't been arrested or anything like that. I haven't dropped out of school. I still get pretty good grades, and I'm still a pretty good functioning alcoholic, I guess. I'm able to kind of do the things I'm supposed to do and drink and party when I can. Little by little, of course, that all deteriorates. That's how I got here. But I'll skip ahead till the time I'm maybe 21 years old. Now I'm legal drinking age. There's no more problem getting alcohol. I'm going to school at Ohio State. I'm noticing more and more that I have blackouts, more frequent blackouts. Little by little they would come along. It started out as one, a year, and then pretty soon now it's about one a month. But I didn't think too much of it. You're out drinking with your buddies and you forget how you got home. It didn't seem like that big of a deal. But I met this girl at work, and her name was Caroline. And as I often say, she had good taste in men, and I know that because she agreed to go out with me. And I wanted to impress this girl, and the best thing I could think of was, I'm sure she'll be impressed by a quarter mug night at Papa Joe's on Saturday night. Yeah, that was the best thing I could come up with. I thought for sure she'll appreciate that. But anyway, my plan was to show up a little early, have a few just to take the edge off, just so I could get my, you know, debonair on, and who knows what would happen after that, you know. But anyway, what happens is by the time she shows up, I'm, you know, right on the verge of a blackout or in one. You know, I barely remember her showing up, and nothing tragic happened other than the fact that I made a complete fool of myself, and I pretty much blacked out right about then. It was early, you know, like 9 o'clock at night, and I don't have to explain blackouts to you guys, but that blackout really scared me because, you know, I was in Columbus on High Street, and at that time it was a pretty rough and tumble type of place. You know, they had cops there, and people got mugged, and you know, there are just thousands of people there. I've seen the kind of things that happened there, and you know, when I woke up in bed the next day, and you know, vaguely remember being thrown out of some bars and wandering down some alleys and things like that. It really just kind of scared me, and I thought, man, who the heck was in charge while I was out to lunch? You know, this wasn't just I don't remember getting home. I was a member the whole night. And you know, I had recently talked to my dad and gone down to visit him, and when I left, I think I've told this story before, how the stewardess on the airplane handed me an envelope and he'd written me a letter that said, "You're an alcoholic," you know. And that rang a chord of truth inside me, and it hurt my feelings at the time. It made me cry, but it didn't make me stop. And you know, this blackout I just recently had, not too long ago, my dad saying that, you know, smart guy that I was, I kind of put that together and thought I better quit drinking for a week or so, you know. Yeah. And I did, you know, I quit drinking for a week or so, and I was still doing some other stuff, smoking some of that special tobacco, and, you know, I got to thinking, this is all right, you know, I get to, you know, substitute one for the other. I don't have to worry about blacking out and getting DUIs and doing all those things, but I get to keep the same people and places and things and live this same party life that I'm living, and I feel a little bit more in control. You know, I gave myself that illusion of power over alcohol and drugs, and so I did that for a while. You know, I wasn't drinking, I was doing some other stuff. I'm still going to college. I had gotten a job at UPS by then. I was a supervisor there, and I really liked my job. Pretty soon I graduated from Ohio State. It was like 1993. I was 22 or 23 years old, and still wasn't drinking, still doing, you know, still partying, living the drinker's life, but not actually drinking alcohol, you know. Just like we sometimes say, well, I'm not going to drink whiskey or tequila, you know. My thing was just, I'm not going to drink, I'm all right, I don't want to become an alcoholic, you know. So my life progresses there. I'm out of school, and again, my life's still going good. Things are going great for me. I've never been arrested. I just graduated from college. I'm in management at one of the world's biggest companies. You know, I'm making, you know, pretty good money. I'm making $30,000 right out of college. I'm only working part-time, and you know, I'm convinced that I'm master of the universe and everything's going well. You know, I look back now and I can see how it wasn't quite going so well, but you know, at the time it seemed like it was going well. And for the next few years, I just continued to live that life, and I worked a lot, you know, like you do when you're young and you're climbing your way to the top. And when I wasn't working, I was partying, and you know, like I said, I quit drinking. I want to mention that, you know, when I quit drinking, when I was 22 and I had stopped drinking for a while, I was drinking daily. I drank all the time. I drank between classes at college. You could do that. Go down to the student union and shoot some pool and drink beer. I even remember going into work a couple of times and them saying, "Hey man, you can't come in here with alcohol on your breath." It was the 80s, you know. Nowadays they just fire you, but then they'd say, "Hey, you're not supposed to do that." But you know, when I first came in here, I thought, boy, some of the people went to work drunk. You know, they're worse than me. You know, but I got honest with myself and realized that, you know, I used to go to work like that, and they just kind of told me to stop. So I did stop. I quit drinking a couple hours before work. And anyway, I was drinking daily, and I was drinking alcoholically. That's important to remember, in my opinion. So my life progresses. I get a few promotions at work. Things are going well. You know, I've never been married. I don't have any kids, so all the money that I make is going in my pocket. I always make pretty good money. I work for a big company. I'm a supervisor there. You know, I'm not drinking, but I'm doing pretty much everything else I can get my hands on. And no problems in life, so to speak. No arrests or anything like that. You know, I think I got this thing licked. Every once in a while somebody will ask me about drinking, and I'll say, hey, you know what? I was becoming an alcoholic, you know. I outsmarted this thing. I dodged that bullet. I learned a little bit about it going to meetings with my dad. You got to be careful with that stuff. Yeah, I fooled myself into thinking that I had some sort of power over it, you know. And I realized today that it was just a substitute, you know, for alcohol, and that alcohol is very patient, and it comes back into my life later on. You know, I'm about 30, early 30s. Like I said, life's going good. I'm making a lot of money. I have, you know, various self-imposed crises along the way, but nothing terrible. And I get an office job, and I'm getting out of shape, and I decide I'm going to go jogging to get in shape. And I jog about a quarter of a mile, and I'm out of breath, and I turn around and I walk home. And that doesn't sit too well with me because I used to be a runner and you know, a distance runner. So I start running every day, and I get more and more in shape. And pretty soon I'm an alcoholic, so I got like an all or nothing personality, right? I'm either just laying on the couch all the time or I'm just running 10 miles a day. And I start running, and I really get into running, and I'm running 10 miles a day, man. And I'm training for the Columbus Marathon, and this is probably the prime of my life. I'm making, I'm making a lot of money. I'm making 50 grand a year probably, and I come home every day and I run 10 miles. I'm just in the best shape of my life. And I come home and take a shower and I go out and party like a rock star all night, and I do everything I can think of except alcohol, to prove to myself that I don't have a problem, that I got this thing licked and I got it under control. I often tell the story, I think you've all heard it, but I just can't resist telling it, the story of running that marathon. And the night before I didn't know what to do, and I consulted a running book, and the marathon was on a Sunday morning, and I thought, what do I do the night before? Do I lay on the couch? Do I go for a run? Do I eat a big meal? And the book said, just do what you always do. I thought, okay, it's Saturday night, so there I was on the phone with my dude and hooking up with my buddies, and I was out just doing all those things that I don't need mention, but all the things besides alcohol out there that you can do. And I was out partying until 3 in the morning, and I came home and I took a brief nap, and I woke up, and I got in my truck and I headed on down to downtown Columbus where the marathon started. And most people were there at the running club in the family van and eating bananas and whatnot. And, I just kind of staggered towards the starting line, and this was back in the day before nicotine patches, and I thought, man, this is going to be about a 4-hour run, and it's going to be a long time before I get to smoke a cigarette. And so I grabbed my cigarette and my lighter, and I walked towards the starting line, and I stood there with all those thousands of runners that were stretching out, and I lit that cigarette. I just smoked it like I was facing a firing squad, buddy. And then people looked at me. They looked at me like, what is wrong with this guy? And I didn't do it to be a jerk. I just did it because I needed a cigarette, and I knew I wouldn't get one for a while. And I often tell that story, but it's also real indicative of what my life was like. From a distance, it looked all right. Look at that guy. He's getting ready to run a marathon. I'm in management, so I got a nice clean cut, no beard. And I always dressed kind of preppery, and from a distance, it looked like, boy, that guy must have everything going on. He's running a marathon. It's Sunday morning. He's up here getting ready to run 26 miles. But the truth is, wait a second, I know that guy. He's smoking a cigarette, I saw that guy at the bar last night, He closed the place down and left with the dope dealer, And, that's what my life was like on the outside. You know how we do everything we can to make it look good on the outside. I wore so many polo clothes, my friends called me Ralph Lauren, I was always worried about what I was wearing and how I looked and who I hung out with, and I made everything look good on the outside. But when everybody wasn't looking, I was off in places, that you only see on cops or something. I was, in bad parts of town with bad people, and I got a real rush out of that, and I was just doing everything I could get my hands on besides alcohol. And I didn't need that stuff, because there's all this other stuff here for me to do. But, I did that marathon thing 2 years in a row. I did the same thing the next year. It's just the way it was. That's why I picked up the nickname Superman, because people were like, how the heck can you do that? I said, I don't know. It's just what I did. I do want to mention another more will be revealed thing that happened in my life is, I often, mention that I used to make a lot of money, and I went to college and all that, and I ran a marathon, and all those times that I was making all that money, and all those times when I was in such good shape. Meanwhile, my mom is back in Yorksville, Ohio, living by herself, and she was diagnosed with MS many years ago, and she, the heat gets to her, and stairs get to her, and she's not very strong, and she gets tired real easy, and I can tell you that the number of times this guy that ran 10 miles a day went down and mowed her grass is zero. The number of times that I took time out of my day and time away from my busy life and my friends and my partying to go shovel the snow or help my mom out was zero. It was all about me and making myself feel like a big shot and having fun. And I worked for the largest package distribution company in the world, and I think the total number of times that I sent a gift down to Florida to my dad or my mom or my sister for Mother's Day or Father's Day, I think it was zero. And that's the truth, and it was all about me. I'm an alcoholic. I was selfish and self-centered and ungrateful, and I didn't even realize it. I thought I was doing my family a favor when I picked up the phone and called them. What a gift to hear from me. Of course, I didn't realize those kind of things until I came in here. But to skip ahead a little bit, again, my life's going good. Even though I'm kind of a jerk and don't realize it, I'm making a lot of money. I'm relatively successful. I've gotten all the things in life that I wanted. When I took the last promotion that I took at UPS, they put us in a room and they said, you'll retire from this job as a millionaire. And it wasn't a sales job. They said, you'll be a millionaire when you retire from this job. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back. The money's gone. The job's gone. You know what I did with that money. But the point is, I had achieved the things in life that I've been working for, and I wanted to get out of this small town. I want to get a good education. I want to get a good job. I want to live in the city. And I got a job, and I want to get to this level. And every step along the way, as I got closer, instead of thinking I'm going to do less drinking and drugging because I'm getting happier in life, I just did more. That functioning alcoholic, and the alcoholic starts to outweigh the functioning pretty soon, and that's what begins to happen in my life. I've got a job, and I got a pretty expensive and a pretty time-consuming. There wasn't any alcohol involved at the time, but it was a lot of drugs involved in it. I was burning the candle at both ends, and at work they wanted me to do kind of ridiculous things like show up and be there and be responsible and be disciplined and get your work done, and things that you're just asking way too much of me. You don't even understand how late I was out last night. And little by little that catches up to me, and I don't lose my job as a direct result. Like I don't get fired for showing up drunk, but little by little I'm just not doing my job. And one day they said, what, it'd be nice if you just left. And I don't need this job. So then the bottom really falls out. About a year prior to that, I'd been in a relationship with a girl, and she for some reason didn't find much humor in me, drinking and partying all the time, and so that didn't work out, and that really kind of broke my heart. And then I worked real hard, and then I lost my job, and that didn't work out. So now my life starts to take a real quick downward turn. I'm maybe 35 or 36, and after things going good for a long time, now they really start to fall out. And of course, I'm in no condition to deal with things like that. All my life, I've dealt with all my problems, the same way we all did, by drinking or using other stuff to just run away. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with those feelings. I don't want to deal with those people. I'm just changing everything. And life begins to fall apart quickly, and I take, some more menial jobs, less paying jobs, I guess I'd say. The only jobs I could get my hands on. And for the first time in my life, I would start to become the guy that's like not hardly at work ever. I never used to have an attendance problem. And finally, one day I wake up to go to work, and the willpower, I can just feel it drain out of me. I'm not even going in. I'm not even going to call them. I'm just not going in. And then, I'm still not drinking, but by now I've progressed into using just stronger stuff. I started using a lot of pills, and pretty soon there's some needles involved and other stuff like that. I don't really need to go into. I think we all know what's out there, but I'm just using, and I'm just messed up 24 hours a day, and my life's just spinning wildly out of control. I have no idea I'm miserable, and it's hard to describe that feeling, and it took a while, but within the course of about 2 or 3 years, my life went from everything's going great, I'm making lots of money, and I'm master of the universe, to just, I wish my house would blow up. I feel so miserable, and all my friends are gone, and there's no more parties or anything. I just lay here and try to just escape from reality, and it's hard to describe all that, and unfortunately most of you have been through it, but I've gone through all my money and savings and ungodly amounts of money, and I have nothing left in the world but a $1,000 income tax check that's coming my way, and it's coming like real soon. Like I'm checking the mailbox for it. It's the one thing I do every day is get up and make it to the mailbox, and it still hasn't shown up. And I get this idea, and I say, when that check gets here, I'm going to the liquor store and I'm going to start drinking again, and it's going to fix everything. And it sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, as sure as I'm standing here, I knew that if I started drinking again, all these problems would go away. I said, that's your problem, Jim. You're messing with all this other stuff. You just need to go back to drinking. And I can remember, I haven't taken a bath in a week. I mean, my house is filthy. My beard and long hair, I look like I'm something on Castaway. Robinson Crusoe was better groomed than I was. I'm just a miserable wreck. And my brain says, boy, if you just get that check and go to the liquor store, you can get yourself, I just imagine myself in a suit and tie, sitting there just drinking, not a care in the world. All these problems that I had would just be gone, 17 years without a drink, and I still had an alcoholic solution in my mind, Thankfully, miraculously, that check never came, and I never got to take that drink because my stepmother showed up at the door through another miraculous situation. She'd never been to my house before, but she sensed something was wrong. And anyway, she shows up and basically kicks the door in and says, "You're coming with me." And at that time in my life, I needed someone like that. And I didn't resist. It's pretty foggy. I packed 3 pair of dress shoes and a pair of sweatpants for some unknown reason, and off we went to some facility. Like I said, I always call it a rehab. The T-shirt said rehab. The sign out front said mental behavioral hospital. But I was just broken, man. I was just done. I remember standing there crying and being embarrassed and covering my face because I didn't want to cry in front of my mom, and I was just miserable. I didn't know what to do. And even then, I had really no intentions of getting sober. I just thought, well, I'll go there for a couple of days and sleep it off, and they'll give me some good stuff. I can remember being so, when I first got there, they never gave me any, powerful stuff. They gave me some stuff to sleep and some, what do you call them, mood enhancers, something mild, And I remember being still just so stuck in that lifestyle that I would take the pills they gave me and pretend to swallow, and I'd go back to my room and crush them all up and pound into a powder form, That's how messed up I was. And somewhere, in that time, I spent about 10 days in rehab, and I just woke up one day and just kind of looked around and had that moment of clarity. I looked outside and I thought, what happened to my life? Things used to be going good, and now I can't even. I was looking outside at this nice looking tree, and I thought, boy, I'd like to go out there, and someone seems to have locked the door, and I couldn't go out there, and I just had that moment of clarity, and I thought, maybe drugs and alcohol have taken my life away, and have really caused me some problems. And I'm a pretty quick learner. I can remember somebody when I was in 10th grade, one of my teachers pulled me out in the hall and said basically the same thing to me. Alcohol's messing up your life. And of course, I didn't believe him, but here it was 20 years later, and it's starting to click with me. Maybe drugs and alcohol are robbing me of a good life. So anyway, what's important is that's May 5th of 2009, and for once in my life, I've become willing to entertain the idea of getting clean and sober, because, I know a lot of folks have been in and out, and that's their story, but I've never been in and out. I've never thought to myself, I've never been to another meeting for my sake. I never tried to get clean and sober, I tried to quit a lot of times and did all those on-the-street relapses. I'll never do that again, but for the once in my life, I thought, about seriously living a clean and sober life, and that was important. It was a turning point, when I just became willing to kind of open my mind to this idea of being clean and sober. And I often tell people that I look back today on May 5th of 2009 as one of the best days of my life, and because it was my sobriety date. But I can remember being so miserable on that day that I took out a piece of paper and a pencil, and the only way I knew to get this feeling out was to just write it down. And I wrote, today is May 5th of 2009. It's the single worst day of my life. Today I told my mother that I was addicted to heroin, and I was sorry that she ruined the life she gave me. And I remember that was real emotional for me, and at the time, I was just at the bottom, like today it seems like a good thing, but at the time I was just where we've all been, just bottomed out and emotionally spent, and just everything about me was just done. But I was finally willing and beat up enough to say maybe I can entertain this idea of getting clean and sober. And I did, and I kind of started to pay attention to some of the little meetings and talks they had in there, and within a couple of days, they let me out of there, and I didn't know what to do. But I thought, if I can get back and go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, I think those people are going to know what to do, And if they wouldn't have known what to do, I don't know where I'd be today, probably dead. But that's what happened. I got out of this. It was Massillon Heartland Hospital is what it was. And I got out and I came back and I went to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And of course I walked in there and I wanted to blend in and kind of go into stealth mode so nobody would notice me. About 2 or 3 steps into the door, that whole plan fell apart, and everybody said, "You're new here, aren't you?" And I remember Brad was there, and he was the first guy to shake my hand, and I remember Big Dave was there. He's no longer with us. I remember Dave said, "No matter who you are, no matter what you've been through, brother, somebody here's been through it too, and you're in the right place." And that meeting was a little bit foggy, but it was the first time in my life. I remember they said, "Is there anybody new here?" And of course my mind said, "Just stay in your seat, shut up, and sit down, don't say nothing." But meanwhile, my body had stood up and said, "My name's Jim, I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict." And I don't know, it was just a surrender. I'm just done. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, and they told me to keep coming back, and I liked what they said. I can still remember the person that led that day and some of the things they said, and they told me to show up tomorrow in Yorksville. You gotta be kidding me. There's an AA meeting in Yorksville. It's 2 blocks from my house. There's an AA meeting that's been going on since the day I was born, practically. So I showed up there, and it was the anniversary, and they had all kinds of food, and that really kind of kept me coming back. This is all right, But I just came there and I listened, and I I knew that those people had kind of been through it, that you folks had been what I'd been through, and I just was willing to listen at that time, and I thought I'm going to give this thing 30 days and see how it goes, and once 30 days go by, I'm going to work up the courage to ask somebody to be my sponsor, and I went to a meeting every day for 30 days, and I finally got the courage to ask Brad to be my sponsor. And you know, I remember the first time I had to sit and talk with him, I was terrified, and I thought, when I tell this guy that I haven't drank for many years, he's going to be furious. He's going to throw me out of his car and tell me to never come back to Alcoholics Anonymous again. You know, you got a problem with a lot of other stuff, but you're not an alcoholic. And of course that didn't happen. You know, I told him that, and here we go. You know, let me just unlock the door. But he said, you know, I've heard a lot of stories like that, and you know, I don't remember what all he said, but the point was it was okay, you know, because alcohol's what got me started, and it's what got me here, and you know, I had a desire to stop drinking, and I know what would happen if I picked up a drink today. The same thing that happened many years ago, you know, and I know today that all that other stuff was just, it was just a substitute. I was just changing seats on the Titanic, and all that other stuff was just me fooling myself into thinking I got some power over alcohol, and the truth was, you know, if a couple more days would have went by and that check would have showed up, I'd have started drinking again. I knew it. There wasn't a doubt in my mind. And anyway, I started going to meetings, and you know, Brad started working me through the steps, and you know, I can remember Ralph Furby saying, we've seen a lot of smart guys not get this program, you know, keep it simple and dummy up. And you know, for once in my life, I was able to try to do that, because you know, like a lot of alcoholics, I thought pretty highly of myself despite my present condition. And you know, I thought I was a little smarter than the average bear. But for once in my life, I just had that idea that, you know what, you know, this thing's been working, and you know, somebody told me along the way, you know, your best thinking got you here, and they were right. You know, my best thinking's what got me here, and you know, I tried not to analyze things and just do what they tell you, man. Just do what they tell you. They told me to wake up tomorrow and call a couple people from AA, and that's what I did. And they said go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and that's what I did. And little by little, I started to feel better, and people started telling me I was looking better. And, you know, that magic started to happen, and you don't even realize it. You know, just worried about staying sober one day at a time. And man, I met so many good people along the way. You know, Brad was my sponsor, but I had a lot of unofficial sponsors, I like to call them. You know, those old timers and veterans that would you know, talk the program to you and take you to meetings, and were just willing to sit and listen to your crazy ramblings. You know, those people helped me so much. Little Gary was there, man. He was the one that suggested we stand at the main entrance of Founders Day and shake everybody's hand. Yeah, I was telling my dad about that. You know, I was 30 days sober on my Founders Day with little Gary, you know. But man, God bless him, man. He was just 100 miles an hour, just spitting AA at me, you know, and we don't even know what you're talking about. And he's just, you know, if your butt falls off, what do you do? I don't know, put your butt back on, go to an AA meeting. You know, and they would talk to me about things like, you know, if you give someone a ride to a meeting, or if you call another alcoholic, you might be saving their life. And that didn't make any sense to me at the time, but as I go on in the program, it starts to make sense to me. And you know, I had the privilege of, you know, working through my steps and getting to, you know, give some leads and stuff like that and collect my coins. And I got up to about a year of sobriety and was starting to get worried. You know, I thought, what now? You know, what now? I've checked the stuff off my list. I picked up these coins and a one-year coin, and I had the opportunity to sponsor someone. I got to chair a meeting, got to read, I got to lead, and you know, and I was real worried that I would kind of stagnate and didn't know what was going to happen. But you know, if you're in that situation, I can tell you that was just getting your foot in the door. It was just getting my foot in the door. There was so much more to do, and it's an ongoing process. And geez, this program's just a miracle. And then this weekend I got a chance to go to Founders Day with my dad. Like I said, he's lived in Florida for 30 years, never had a chance to go, and then this year he gets a chance to go with me, and that was just amazing. You know, it was just amazing, and it's just one of the many miracles that's been given to me by this program. And so much stuff, you know, if I keep working these steps and I keep, you know, trying to maintain my spiritual condition, I get that one day at a time reprieve from that, you know, alcoholism and drug addiction that just took my life away, and little by little it comes back. You know, I always say that when I first got here, if they'd have said, you know, Jim, we can make you feel better, you know, we can keep you from drinking and using, but you're going to have to live under a bridge and eat out of a garbage can the rest of your life, I'd have taken that deal. You know, as bad as I felt, I'd have just said, that's all right. You know, I'd live under a bridge and eat out of a garbage can, just make me stop feeling this way and living. You know, I look back today, and I was living a life with no hope. You know, there was no hope there. You just wake up. Like I said, I didn't have a bed by then. I just woke up on the floor. But you just wake up and there was no reason to get up off the floor. Life was just an emptiness, and that's the way I felt. And, but Alcoholics Anonymous has given me so much more than that. It's given me, I'm in a good relationship, and I have a relationship with my family today and my friends, and, I just take one day at a time, and I just hope that, we always pray for the knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out, and the longer I go along, the more I see that's just a full-time job, just worrying about Jim and trying to let God work on Jim's character defects, because they just keep popping up. And, they taught me in here about honesty and acceptance and gratitude. I was thinking this week about how important those three things are in my life, or our lives, about just trying to stay honest with myself and just accepting other people, man. That's a trick, acceptance is the answer to all my problems, as Brad always says, and my biggest problem is my lack of power. And those things, even 5 years sober, just amazes me. Those defects keep coming back to you, and you just think, man, I'm getting all wrapped up in this person's problems and what I think they need to do. What I just need to do is accept it and take an honest look at myself and be grateful for the things I have. That's what they taught me in this program. I was thinking today that unfortunately a lot of people that were instrumental in getting me sober in early sobriety, some of those people aren't with us today, And, by the grace of God, there go I, They're not here, and I'm not here to take their inventory. I'm glad they showed me what they showed me, and I keep trying to use that spiritual tools that they did give me. And I don't know, man, I could just ramble on forever about the miracles and the beauty of this program. I want to thank you all for coming and just getting to share this really special moment in my life and my dad's life with me. And if nobody told you they loved you today, you probably weren't listening, but I love you. God bless you.
I've got a copy of this thing.